Welcome to the Riding in the Weeds podcast, where we tackle life's inevitable challenges, from navigating mountain bike trails to overcoming business hurdles and forging deeper connections with pets and people. It's easy to find yourself tangled in the weeds, but we're here to help with insights and strategies that'll get you out of the weeds. Our goal is to boost your performance in both sports and everyday life by sharing essential skills that we've learnt along the way. Through tales of our entrepreneurship journey, thrilling biking adventures, and fostering meaningful relationships, your hosts, Natasha, Lockey, and Ginny, Branden, will guide you on a journey that's not only enjoyable, but also inspiring. Join us to gain confidence that you need to navigate the trails of life. Hello and welcome to episode 55 of Riding in the Weeds. Today we're going to talk about slowing down to speed up. This episode is for you if you find yourself going a little bit too fast, or maybe you find that you're scared to actually take a day off or slow down because you don't know if you can get started, or even maybe you feel guilty when you take downtime, right? Like when you're taking self-care, when you're doing things for yourself, are you constantly getting stuck in the mind noise of, no, I should be doing something else? We're going to explore all of those concepts with the idea of we've got to be able to slow down and just really digging into what that means, what that looks like when it comes to our biking, when it comes to our animals, when it really comes to everything in our life. So stay tuned. We got a goodie for you today. And I am Natasha Lockey. I am a performance, life, and mountain bike coach. And we've got our expert animal communicator, Ginny Branden, with us. And she's going to kick us off with first thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, trying not to melt here in Maryland. It's a little hot right now. I'm kind of jealous of your temperatures because I know you're not this warm.
Yeah, I'm a lizard though, so I like being hot.
It's been pretty rough lately. And I guess in a way, I'm finding myself forced to slow down a little bit right now because it's just too dang hot to sustain a whole lot of speed outside. And I mean, I'm a sun baby, so I thrive in the sun. But when it gets too hot, there's a point where you just can't sustain that level of production when you're outdoors, at least in my opinion. And I find that it just makes a lot more sense to take small incremental steps instead of trying to tackle huge tasks. I just have to break things down and work on each little step along the way with the intention that eventually something bigger will get accomplished. And you do what you can in that situation. And I think that's what's important about slowing down to speed up, is that sometimes you need to recognize that the only way you are going to get something done is by taking the small steps consistently, rather than trying to focus on the big goal and continue to pound away at that. Because in the heat, if you don't take care of yourself, you can end up really sick from that. So that's not going to serve anybody, because now you're stopped completely. So that defeats the whole purpose at that point.
Yeah, I think that really summarizes it in so many different ways. If you're training for a marathon and your only day to train is on a Saturday at 12 o'clock lunchtime and it's really, really hot, you probably need to go and find yourself a treadmill in a gym, because going for that planned run that you were going to do is not going to work. The same thing with it being too cold, right? You're planning on going for a bike ride and you've got this set plan that you want to do. If it's too cold, it's not good for your body. So we really need to be able to find that kind of slow and steady, that way of moving through things, because life happens, whether we're talking about sports, whether we're talking about work, whether we're talking about whatever it is, life happens. And so being able to adjust, being able to take the opportunities when they come, and then be ready to adjust for whatever that throws you off, is really, really important. Otherwise, you just get very discombobulated.
Yeah. And Lord knows that's where I've been before. One of the things that can happen when you're pushing super hard and trying to go through a whole lot of things really quickly is burnout. That can end up being one of the side effects of rushing. You make more mistakes that way. You can end up having to backtrack because you were so focused on getting down a path or moving quickly through tasks that you don't realize that you should have taken the turn back there instead, and you just completely blew by it. And it's very counterintuitive to think about slowing down in order to actually speed up. But when you don't make mistakes, when you make sure you're on the right track and adjusting the track as needed, and you're not going to get burned out, then in the long run, you will move faster. So there's a big benefit to doing that, but you have to be willing to go against that urge to keep moving more quickly.
It's said a lot, but I don't think it can be undersaid, is that we always overestimate what we can do in a year and we underestimate what we can do in 10 years. And when I'm teaching braking and mountain biking, this is something that I've found has helped people incredibly. It really helps them learn the braking techniques and when to brake, was to actually take it away from, this is your left brake, this is your right brake, this is when you brake, this is how you brake, and actually eliminating all those pieces and finding our braking points. So knowing when you start going too fast, slowing down before you get to the, oh shit, I'm going to crash, I can't get this back under control. And when you start to be like, oh, this is a little bit fast, you're slightly outside your comfort zone, that's where you want to start slowing it back down. And you actually want to bring it all the way to the point where you're like, now I'm going too slowly. And at that point, you want to bring it all the way back up. And what most people do is they don't let themselves go quite fast enough, and then they don't let themselves go quite slow enough. And so you don't find your limits. You never actually know what too fast feels like, and you never know what too slow feels like. And then in biking, what people do is they just hold the brakes on. You would never do that in your car. We do it
Oh
in
no.
biking, we do it in life, right? The
People do
brakes.
it in their car too, so
True story. Ian gets so frustrated with that as well. You've just got your brakes are kind of permanently on just enough so that you maintain the same speed. But what that does is it disables you from being able to absorb the bumps. Again, if you're biking, ears perked, this is what you want to do in order to go faster. You want to use your brakes less, but be able to maintain the same speed. And what you'll find is very quickly your tolerance for how fast you can go will increase. Same thing with your life, right? If you're able to see, oh, I'm going a little bit fast, I need to put the brakes on, and not just tap the brakes, but actually bring yourself all the way back to stop, do some grounding, do a meditation, take a moment to breathe, and then get started again. You will be way more efficient than you will be if you just tap the brakes a little bit and then keep going again. But when you're in burnout, when you're in overwhelm, you get very used to that space. So you tap the brakes a little bit, and that feels like you've slowed down a little bit. However, because you're so used to going so fast and being on the edge of burnout the whole time, you stay there, and eventually you actually go into burnout, and then you actually have to stop. And then
yeah.
you got to be there for a while. And I'm just starting, and I think with the help of a few supplements here, I'm just starting to feel like I can push a little bit. But because I went too far for too long and I sat on that edge, when I came back a little bit, I felt like that was enough. And then I was just rolling along with my brakes on just a little bit. And I never actually really recovered. I was never able to move into that space where you're leading back to biking. If you can be the one driving the bike, then your bike is responding to you. If you're riding the bike, then you're reacting to everything that's happening. It's the same thing in your life. If you are out there and you're driving, you've written down the 3 things you're going to do today, and then anything else that happens on top of that is a bonus. You've got your goal, you know what you're doing, you are driving, and now you are able to let everything around you respond to you versus not knowing quite what you're doing and having a to-do list that's 500 miles long. You are now reacting to everything that comes, and you don't have the ability to be like, yep, I will get back to you in 2 hours. Right now, I'm doing this thing.
There's actually a technique in riding that's used sometimes called a half halt. And what the half halt does is it's a cue to the horse to not stop, but to slow down in such a way that it helps them to rebalance their body. And just like in the car or on the bike, you can't ride the horse with the brakes on the whole time. And it gets to the point where that no longer is a cue and it's just noise to the horse. So it's not effective if you're going to constantly be pulling the horse back. That's not going to be an effective communication tool at that point. So half halts are useful because it asks the horse to rebalance, but then there's a release. It's not like a whole halt, or it's not a hold of the reins and your body position. It's a request and then a release. And if you are going to be able to sustain yourself, you can't hold the brakes on the whole time. And you've got to be able to rebalance in order to continue moving forward. And that's the thing about slowing down to speed up, is that it ends up being more efficient in the long run. It may feel painfully slow in the moment, but what's important is you're still making progress and you're still doing things. It's just with a greater level of awareness and more presence with what's happening. And like you said, you actually have a plan. You have a thought out process about where you're going, why you're doing it, and what you're doing. So therefore, you don't get off track. You don't get burned out. You don't end up spiraling so quickly through life or down the trail or whatever that you miss your turn, or you end up careening off the trail and having a wreck of some kind. And the universe has a way of waking us up. If we are rolling too fast through life, frequently that wake-up call will be abrupt. As they say, it's not speed that kills, it's the sudden stops. And that's what happens. The universe will give us a sudden stop, hopefully not a death stop, but it will give us a sudden stop if we're not listening and we're not paying attention to what's happening around us and internally to us. I'm so prone to just blowing through things and going quickly and not actually paying attention to what's going on. But every time in my life I've taken the time to have more presence and slow down and be more intentional about what I'm doing, I actually make far more progress in every area of my life. It doesn't matter whether I'm working with the animals or whether I'm trying to do business stuff or any area of my life that I want to achieve a goal. If I am much more intentional and methodical and purposeful about how I'm doing things, then I make a lot more progress a lot more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking when you were talking about how there's a lot of information right now around dogs. Again, if you're out with your dog and it's reacting to a lot of things, instead of dragging that dog around on a walk, letting the dog stop and smell what's going on and actually not going anywhere is really, really good for the dog. We kind of think, well, the dog is there to help us get fit. Actually, no, you're going out with your dog for your dog. But very quickly we make it about us. And well, it's great. It's keeping me in shape. So I don't want to do it slowly because I got a double purpose here, right? I can walk the dog and I can get my own walk in. What was interesting though is what came up is you can't walk a cat that way. Right? If you want to take your cat for a walk, you're not thinking, right, me and the cat are going out, I'm going to get some exercise. It's it's literally like, okay, I'm going to walk outside with the cat on my leash. We're probably going to stand around. I'll take 3 steps. We won't go anywhere. And very often, like, it's not an exercise at all, which is really hard when you're like, I've got to take half an hour out of my day, twice a day, to take this cat on a walk. Well, now I've got to find another hour in my day to take myself on an actual walk that's going to be beneficial. And these things become annoying. And so noticing where you're making it about you versus the other things that are around you is really important. Just having that awareness is where to start, because if you're going really fast and you're constantly on that edge, then you're finding it hard to find time, which means you're not stopping to think about it. But if you just take a couple of steps backwards, you're going to realize that your busyness is actually probably what's disabling you from slowing down. And the reason that we create busyness is because going slow, we feel guilty, we feel bad about ourselves. Back to riding a bicycle. If you're riding with people that are faster than you, you're going to try and go faster to keep up with them. But that will generally end up in you not being able to do the feature, or not being able to make the uphill corner or the downhill corner. And so overall, you're going to actually go slower because you're having to get off and walk. Whereas if you actually just slowed down the entire time, you would over time become faster, but you're also in the moment going to be faster, because it takes way longer to get off and walk something than it does to do the exact same thing a little bit slower.
Yeah. I have that challenge when I'm riding with Eddie because he tends to be faster than I am, but I like having him in front of me. And there's some benefit for me because I would probably go too slow on the trails if I didn't have his motivation in front of me. But I also have learned that sometimes I just need to focus on me and do what I can in that section of the trail, whatever it is we're doing, because otherwise then I end up being a little bit more out of control. And I love your cat reference though, because cats tend to be masters at self-care. They are the epitome of what you could consider to be the best level of self-care you could give yourself, because cats don't give a flying fuck about anything. They take care of themselves how they need to in whatever the moment is. And it doesn't matter what else is going on around them. If they want to do something, they're going to do it. And sure, sometimes they race around like crazy. They get the zoomies just like any other animal. But when their energy's gone, it's gone, and they're going to go back to sleeping, or they're going to go back to grooming, or they're going to nap, or whatever it is, they're going to take care of themselves. And they always put themselves first. And it's such a great example of making sure that you're paying attention to your needs, because that's part of what slowing down to speed up is about, is making sure you're checking in with your own needs and not blowing over them in your desire to accomplish a goal. And when you do pay attention to your needs, what feels like going slow is actually going to be more rejuvenating, or is going to give you more energy later, rather than truly, quote, slow you down. So you're going to be able to respond and react better down the road a little bit than you are now, because you took the time that you needed to take the break, or to move slowly, or to do whatever it was that you needed to do in a different way. And that's like the best example that I think you can give is, if you're not sure, check in with your cat, because they're probably going to be able to tell you what you need in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. To bring us around to another side of the topic, I read a book once, and it was all about now is the perfect time. We get so caught up in, I'm running late, I'm not going to get there on time, this is not going to work out. And I had to remind myself today, as I was running into an appointment late, as I was running through my head and freaking out that I couldn't find a parking spot, and I'm going to be late, and then I'm going to be late for this, and then it's going to be a cascading effect of just lateness, because I had everything stacked up. And I just reminded myself, you know what? The time that I get there will be the perfect time. I was going to the lab to get some bloods taken, and it's quite often really busy. If you miss your appointment, then you go to the back of the line. You're now sitting there until they have time. As I'm walking down the corridor, I was like, you know what? When I get there will be the perfect time. And they walked in, and there were two other people sitting in the waiting room. And I handed them my card. I said, oh, I'm sorry, 5 minutes late for my appointment. And they're like, yeah, no problem. Then I went in and messaged my friend, I'm going to be a moment late for my next appointment. And, we got that appointment done in plenty of time. We didn't need the full hour. And then you and I had time to chat. You had a snack. I had a snack. I had a phone call. And we're here. And everything has worked out in the perfect time. And my day is literally turning into a complete and utter cluster. Everything that I'm supposed to be doing is up in the air and being canceled. And the only thing I can do is be like, okay, this is all working out the way it's meant to be. And how am I going to adjust? And how am I going to move forward with what's happening next? What's important? What's not important? How can I use this extra time? How do I catch up time? But if we just are constantly reminding ourselves that very likely when we're running late or when something's not working out for us, that there are other people that may also be having things going on. And when we communicate those, then everybody is able to adjust to that. It's going to be slippery and rainy outside tonight. We don't know if it'll actually be raining. So I sent a message to my girls that I'm supposed to be doing a biking lesson with. I'm like, do you guys want to ride? How does this look for you? One lady said, well, I feel a little bit unsafe. The next lady says, well, actually, my kids are sick, and so I could come, but you might not want what they've got. And then the next lady's like, well, I've actually got a dinner party tonight, so if we cancel, that actually works perfectly with my schedule. And then somebody else is like, well, I mean, I'll go either way, but it will be harder for me to make it up. And so I said to her, well, jump in with the other group. And then if you can move your other thing the next week, you'd have a bonus session. The funny thing is I was actually really keen to get it done because it's not going to be convenient for me. However, just in reaching out, it's actually enabled everybody else. They were probably all a little bit stressed out. And so being able to flow with the adjustments, if you've got your fingers semi on the brakes, all of that's going to feel really bumpy. When you're letting it flow, it's like, okay, well, how else might I use my time? What was I going to miss today because of those things? How am I going to readjust and rebalance instead of being thrown about and feeling like you've made a sudden stop?
Yeah, 100%. This is something that takes practice. And generally, you figure out you should be practicing it because you're going too fast. Things get really, really bumpy, or everything is a blur, and you're like, wait a minute, this is not how this should go. And it just takes awareness and repeating it over and over and over again until you start to realize how to just let go and flow with things. And the number of times that we schedule our podcast recordings and the number of times that one or the other of us has been running late and we message each other and find out that the other person is dealing with something anyway. And when we can give each other grace like that, we know that if something's coming up, that more than likely the other person can either use the time wisely or is also struggling with something. So we don't worry about it. And since we've got that ability in our schedules with flexibility, then it works. And we built it into our routine that way. It's just worked out that way for us, and it works really well. And the more you can find ways to do that in your regular life, in everything, then the easier it gets. And things don't feel rushed, and yet everything is accomplished in its own time. You can't rush nature. You can't rush blooming flowers. Things are going to happen in their own time. And so if you can begin to get into that flow rate, then you don't have to worry about rushing around for everything else. And it takes conscious awareness, which is one of the hardest parts about a lot of the pieces of the puzzle that we talk about, is that conscious awareness of truly being present with it and aware of what's happening. When you're rushing around, when you're riding around with the brakes half on the whole time, you're not aware. You're not present with what's happening. And when you're in that state, then yeah, you are out of control because you're constantly responding to things after the fact. You hit the bump and then you realize you should have done something.
Yeah, absolutely. And you probably said flow about 10 times in what you just said. I want to come back to that because how we create flow is if you slow down, you're able to figure out the appropriate speed. If you come into something too fast, it is really, really hard to scrub speed. Once you've got speed, you've kind of got to ride it out. And then you're able to slow down. So if you're coming into a hill and you don't know how steep it's going to be, you come in slow and then you let yourself roll as per how you come over the side. You're like, oh, that's pretty steep, but there's an uphill on the other side. I can just let it roll. Or you come in and you're like, okay, it doesn't stop. Well, you're going to maintain that speed because if you let yourself go too fast, you're then going to have to grab the brakes and you're going to be skidding out of control. So flow, not necessarily like it gets really bumpy if you go too fast. It also gets too bumpy if you go too slow. So really finding those limits is where you find the flow. And if you slow down, you're then able to let the brakes off so that you can speed up appropriately. And that is the key. Again, just to repeat what you just said, got to be aware. And if nothing else that we talk about, it is really self-awareness, not having the guilt, not feeling bad, that allowing yourself to be here, be present, and you cannot be present if you're constantly reacting. For me this afternoon, I really need to sit down and be like, okay, if I now don't have to do any of the things I thought I was going to do, what do I need to do? Could I go for a bike ride? Or do I need to stay at home and get our podcast ready for tomorrow? What's best for me? And then what is best for everything else around me?
Yeah.
And not just staying in the, okay, well, not going for a bike ride, so therefore I need to do these, and these. That also might not be the appropriate. So just reacting to the situation is not going to necessarily give me the result. I need to actually stop, recenter, revisit, start again because everything's changed.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the key is that when things change, you take that pause for a second to figure out how to rebalance. That's like the half halt when you're riding, like you taking a pause to figure out how to rebalance and move in a different direction so that you can do so in a balanced manner and not fly off the side of the trail or something because you suddenly realized you have to turn. We were riding last weekend at the beach and missed a turn because we were going fast and we'd never been on that trail before, and was like, oh hey, that's where we would mean to be. But then we had too much speed. We were going too fast and he was in the lead, so I'm following him and I'm trying to watch the trail, but I also don't exactly know where we're going. And I think it was like a little access trail that kind of went straight and the actual trail we wanted to be on turned. It was a little bit surprising, but we were fine. We did stop without anybody wiping out or anything, so that was key. It is really a practice, and you figure it out when you suddenly realize you're going too fast. And so that's when you stop and you go, okay, wait a minute. Things are rolling too fast. I need to recenter. I need to refigure out where I'm going and what's important and what the next best step is that I can take without rushing through it and rushing straight into the next thing. This applies in so many different areas of life and business and animals and biking. This lesson is one that the more you can see the connections, the easier it's going to be to make those adjustments in all areas. I don't know, there's much more we can say about that.
Yeah, no, I was going to just sum it up by saying that if you're not willing to let the brakes off and let it roll, then you're not going slow enough. And sometimes that means you actually have to come to a stop. And when I'm teaching this lesson with people on bikes, I will say to them, so like, Tash, I'm too scared to let the brakes off completely. And I'm like, well, then come to a complete stop. Because if you're not willing to let the brakes off completely, it means you are still going too fast. You need to stop, rebalance, recenter, and start over. And
I
then
love it.
that way you will find your flow.
I love it. That's awesome.
Okay, so on that note, I am Natasha Lockey. I am a performance, life, and bike coach. I am here to help you to find that flow. So, really figure out where it is that you need to slow down, where it is that you need to speed up, what are the key things that you're wanting to make happen in your life, and identify what's getting in the way of getting you there. And then adjusting, because coaching is all about looking at what you're doing right and figuring out how you can do more of that so that we stop doing the things that are getting in our way. You can find me at Betty Go Hard on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, Natasha Lockey, and the same on LinkedIn. You can find our podcast at Writing in the Weeds on Instagram, on LinkedIn, website, writingintheweeds.com, and on all of the major platforms, and on Facebook, Writing in the Weeds, same handle. What about you, Jenny?
Yeah, I'm Ginny Branden. I'm an animal communicator and energy healer for animals and their people too. If you are struggling to figure out how to move yourself forward with your relationship with your pet, please reach out to me. I would love to talk with you and your pet and figure out how to bring you some more harmony and happiness in your lives together. You can find me at soulpetconnections.com and on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube under the same handle. Thank you so very much for joining us today. We appreciate your likes, comments, and shares. If you're on Apple, scroll all the way down to the bottom and leave us a review. We would love to hear from you. And let us know if you have any suggestions or questions for the podcast. Thank you so much again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
And if you know somebody who would benefit from listening to this episode, please share it with them, because sharing is caring. We love you all. We know that you got this. Have a great day.